Hi, everyone. My name is Meetesh Karia, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer and the Chief Data Officer of the Zebra. And I wanted to welcome you to a first installment of Tesh on Tap. In this series, we'd like to chat with a number of other tech leaders around town and throughout the US and the world around their careers, companies, and just approaches to leading teams, especially right now, teams that are remote and through quarantine, and then more broadly, teams in a fast-changing and growth stage world. In addition to that, it's also happy hour here. So we're going to have our own drinks of choice and talk a little bit about them and have a little fun with this. So with that, I'd like to introduce our first guest, and thanks for being a willing participant and guinea pig here, Dwamian McLeish. Dwamian was previously the CTO and partner at Camp Gladiator, and recently left to start his own company, which we'll get a chance to talk about a little bit later on. So welcome, Dwamian.
Hey, Tesh. Thanks for having me, man. I feel really privileged to be the first guest on Tesh on Tap. I'm not going to take it personally that I'm the guinea pig, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, if I could say, the reason I chose you, and thank you for being willing, is that we've had a number of fun, informal conversations, and I figured that even if we go off the rails, we're still going to have something entertaining, informative, and a great conversation. So,
well, let's get to it. Hopefully, I don't get too much off the rails, but we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Well, I want to share. I'll share a little bit about what I'm drinking. Then I'd love to hear what you are. So there's a Texas brewery here called Lone Pint Brewery, and I'm actually drinking one of their beers called 667 Neighbor of the Beast,
Wow.
Which is a really interesting beer. I'm a fan of craft beer. I'm also a fan of IPAs, and this is an American IPA. My favorite beer from them is one called Yellow Rose, which if you haven't tried, you should. But the artwork is just phenomenal.
That looks awesome, man. I'm drinking. So the funny thing is, we're all here, under quarantine in Austin and Texas. So I've been ordering from a website called Caskers, and I ordered Woodford Reserve whiskey, and in the box that they sent me the small version of a little whiskey I've never heard about. It's called Howler Head. It actually has also a cool label.
Yeah.
Monkey with
I love
glasses.
The monkey on there with the
Yeah.
glasses on it. Yeah.
Those are always cool. Howler Head whiskey, and I tasted it, man. It's a banana infused whiskey. I tasted it and fell in love with it. I had to buy a bigger bottle, and it's already half gone. So and that was just from the last 5 minutes.
I'm definitely going to be checking it out. One of the things that has always been really important to me, and I've spoken about it some, written about it, and obviously experienced a lot of it growing up, and then has really risen to the forefront now with what's going on in the U.S. in terms of Black Lives Matter and George Floyd and all the protests here, which is just around diversity, right? Diversity in general, diversity in tech, the importance of it, and how we go about getting it, and then just diversity in Austin too, right? We're both based in Austin. Austin, hasn't typically or historically been a very diverse town, and so I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on what diversity means to you, how as you form teams, what's your point of view on how to go out and build a diverse team, does diversity matter? Is it just a number, et cetera?
Yeah. So first of all, it's one of those topics that it's quite unfortunate that it's still, at the forefront of what we're trying to figure out, because, we've had a lot of time. And in fact, this isn't the first time we've been here, right? We've been here to the point where in the past, we've talked about affirmative action in companies and making sure that we can actually diversify the workforce there. And it's 2020, and there's some crazy things happening in 2020, so you can't really rule anything out. But it's really unfortunate that we're still at the point where we're still fighting for this thing that we're all care about, and that's both diversity and inclusion, right? Mm-hmm. So from my perspective, a couple of things. I recently had a few conversations regarding how should you ensure diversity in a company? And, you know, short of everything that everybody else has ever said, I actually came up with a couple of things that I wanted to just kind of bounce off of people.
Yeah,
I thought
absolutely.
this was going to be, since we're drinking and we're going to,
Yep.
you know, we're trying to have fun. There's one of the things I loved about the show, The Voice, on when it used to air, is that when those judges had their chairs turned around, all they could do is just judge people on talent, right? So people started singing, and I mean, they probably had some picture in their head about what this person is going to look like. But the real only judge that you had at the moment was what the person sounded like, right? What the actual skill level of that person was. And obviously you can always see when they turned around and they saw the person, those preconceived notions about, you know, what they heard versus what they expected to see sort of started creeping back in. So here's a couple of thoughts that I had about diversity and ensuring diversity in a workforce. What if there were no names on resumes, right? What if you didn't know who the person was and you were judging them based on, I mean, obviously a resume until you start talking to someone and then you start understanding their true thought process. You know, you try to infer more about their skill, but what if that piece of paper without a name told you essentially if they fit the bill?
It's an interesting one because it's actually come up a lot, you know, during a lot of training and discussion around unconscious bias. And, you know, one of the other things that brings to mind is, you know, right now when we're all working from home and, you know, interviews are over Zoom, maybe we have another opportunity here, which is, you know, there's some amount of wanting to see the person and see their reactions face to face, but maybe we can take advantage of not being, you know, in person and actually doing interviews over Zoom without video on for part of it, right? Maybe there's a part of it that you need, but maybe the first part when you form your you know, your first impressions is actually done with video off.
Right. Yeah. You know, I'm a firm believer of that. If you kind of remove the inherent bias to, you know, when you're getting introduced to someone, more than likely, you know, you're going to be able to take that next step. But the fact still remains, the next step does involve meeting someone and then having a flood of those preconceived notions coming back, right? So the second part of your question is it important in the workforce? I mean, it can't be more important because, you know, we're in technology and we build products that have to appeal to a large audience, large, you know, segment of users, different users. And if you can't empathize throughout your organization to what every user is going to experience when they experience your product, then generally you're going to find, you know, that coming back to haunt you in the end. And so absolutely, it's a very important thing for you to diversify your workforce.
So I have a friend who's led technology teams who actually, you know, has written about this approach a little bit, but his view was that and like technical interviews across the board are completely flawed. And that the way to get around that, you know, and not just the whiteboard part, just all of it. And the way to get around that is you don't do an interview. You give people conditional 90-day jobs, right? And they come and they prove themselves within 90 days or they don't. And you pay them for that time too. That's not only a way to get better evaluations of people, but also bring in a more diverse pool because you're kind of like, just saying, okay, great. Anyone who meets some very minimal requirements, very, very minimal to create, you know, a wide range of things. Yeah. You give them a shot.
The only true gauge of whether or not somebody's really, really good over time is to work with them. So you get them in your organization and you give them the same work that everybody else is doing, the same goals. And then you say, hey, I know it's only a limited amount of time and that you have to prove yourself, but you still have to do the work and you know, and still add value to us. That's the only way I think that we can really understand how people can produce in the environments that we set up for them. And I think you're onto something there.